Yoganali. Hello, friends. We're happy to be here with all of you tonight. We're going to share a song that Michael and I just created and then open our sixth session of Mending the Sacred Hoop. Thank you for joining us.
Going down to the ground, feeling like it's healing something deep inside. Going to the river, going down to the ground, feeling like healing something deep inside. Going to the river, going down to the ground, feeling like healing something deep inside. Going to the river, going down to the ground, feeling like it's healing something deep inside. All can go on and on and on. All can go on and on.
Siona God, welcome everyone. We're so happy that you're joining us for our Mending the Sacred Hoop series. This is our sixth session, and we are in the part of creating new ways for these times from our original instructions. We hope that you will watch the entire series and join us in the seventh session to celebrate what we discover that will help us all come together to mend the sacred hoop in every way that we can. We began our series with sacredness being the balance between man and woman as opposites. How adolescents step into their power with hormonal and energy changes. How could our world experience power today if these adolescents are supported by elders and community, whose example recognizes that power is bringing new life into this world? Life is the appropriate focus of power. Even war and violence is focused on the preciousness of life. Traditional indigenous rites of passage, honoring this transition and many more transitions in life, involves everyone teaching skills and practical necessities for supporting new life as well as the responsibilities that are needed to be a functional member of community in order to support all life. My own experiences of rites of passage include datura, used very carefully in our 21st year of life when we become adults. It taught me that drugs are dangerous and contradictory in our development of the fullness of human potential. Before then, I watched dominant culture practices give outer power to authorities. Adolescents rebelled in protest, but still ruined their lives using outer substance to find their soulful creativity. This began in the 60s when so many lives of famous musicians were lost. Rites of passage are an experience of the fragility of life, with examples of the importance of community protection. The Salish people send a young man into the forest alone, and he can only return when he has found his song. In the 70s, our music and creativity shifted to frequency and quantum physics healing, but the drugs were still dominant, and outer power is still winning. Instead, we want to encourage community support in recognition of our own unique gifts and individuation contributing to human evolution and support of all life. Vine Deloria Jr. wrote of the woodlands people being able to stay alone in the forest for a record of 16 days because they had the support of nature and all life around them. This was a female's experience at the beginning of her moon cycles. As elders, we want to share our experiences of recognizing and supporting developmental stages in psychological, emotional, and responsible maturity, remembering that the passage times will occur naturally if traditional rites are not available, and the lessons can be less kind and gentle that way. An elder is someone who has come through uncommon challenges in a good way. Our walk in the world of community is evidence of this, not necessarily our talk or simply years on earth. We come together to rekindle the rites we know and to learn to listen for ancestors, to bring back the original instructions of these ways. We watch for them in our dreams and synchronicity. We do the work to integrate them and heal the wounds that we carry. Many of us did not have our rights in community because it was illegal until the 1978 Religious Freedoms Act was passed in this country. It is very important not to appropriate these traditional practices. People gave their lives for them when it was illegal. I would like to share my Chumash friends' similar experience of these rites in this video now.
The rites of passage of an AI.
AI? You're not an AI.
Huh?
Not AI.
Yeah.
What are you talking
American Indians.
about? Okay.
So this is the thing, okay? Like nowadays, our spiritual popularity is kind of good in some ways. Lots of people want to be medicine people or shamans or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But people forget that they need to go through a vision quest. Some people are going through vision quest and they don't even know that that's helping them to create this individual connection between that individual and creator. So that way they can get guidance of where they're supposed to be going with their lives. But at the same time, that's part of why we have the rites of passage. From going from childhood to adolescence and working our way into adulthood. So when we go through these different passages, we start becoming more and more familiar with who we are, where we're going in this life. And it's often said, if you don't know who you are, or where you came from, or where you're going, then you're obviously pretty confused. You're easy to be blown around like the leaves in the wind. So it's important to do the rites of passage. And one of the ways, in our way, is we do toloche. Toloche is like a tea that's made out of datura or ginseng weed. It's a heavy-duty hallucinogenic. And if it's not done properly, you could go temporary blind or you can go permanently blind. Or you can have an hallucination or you can be permanently hallucinating. A lot of people these days are doing this stuff because people want to have these out-of-body experiences or whatever. So they're going down to South America and other places like that, and these guys, they extract stuff from the venomous frogs and things like that. They have people injecting this or smoking it or tasting it, and they get sick, and they don't realize there's after effects, just like other types of drugs and things that can come upon you later on. You never know what it's going to be at because they're experimenting. They're figuring out how to give some of this money that's coming from the Americas or these other countries. And those are not true rites of passages because you're not part of those people in the first place. So I don't know how you could think that you can do your rites of passage in another complete identity form that's not your own. You know? So, like I say though, there's like in our ways, we do toloche, we do this tea. And it's under serious supervision and that. And in this rites of passage, there's a lot of people observing how you're conducting yourself, what you're going through. And what you're supposed to do is as a man, and you're usually about 10 years old, is you're supposed to go out and find a deer. And then you're supposed to make something out of every part of that deer to prove to the community and everyone that if it's needed to, you could take the responsibility, you could take the place of a woman and nurture some other kids or clothe them, feed them, you make tools and instruments and guide them of how they can go out and hunt or harvest, in the different, gardens or whatever there is out there for people to get their nourishments from. So, again, all this has to be prepared right. You have to make something out of it. You make clothing and garments out of the deer skins, make tools, water bags, carrying bags, all sorts of things you can make. And so this is looked at as how you prepare this stuff and how you're acting. And that's going to show others of how you're going to act if certain responsibilities are bestowed on you, whether you want them or they just get thrown on you. So, depending if you successfully make it through, then people know in the village whether you're someone that can be counted on or somebody that they want to avoid sharing any responsibilities with, because with these shared responsibilities, other people can be expecting you to hold up a certain end of these responsibilities, and if you're not capable of doing it, that could really cause some problems. That's why we have so many problems in today's society, because a lot of people don't hold up their end of the responsibilities that people take it for granted. They feel that they should already know and they don't know because they were never taught. So that's again on our own thing. Us that are the peers, we take it for granted a lot of times that other people already know and they don't know. So again, like I say, and this is just me saying it, that the rites of passage are an important part of your development, your psychological, your physical, and emotional development into becoming a human being, an adult human being. Okay.
I'm grateful to my friend Mahiwo for sharing his experiences of rites of passage with us. And at this time, I would like to ask SD to share a song if he wants to, and also tell us about the celebration of an infant's first laugh and sand painting to bring balance after returning from war, among other things.
Wado, I will speak some to introduce myself. Doko Da'a SD Yango Salagi Nadagi. So I will speak a little bit on my knowledge and experiences in rites of passage and in the indigenous way of life of many peoples. I think there are certain things that are very basic to the values of many tribes. And I'll speak a little bit about the Dene. I'm not Dene, but I've spent time with Dene, done ceremony with them. I've learned a lot. And so to introduce, I'd like to sing a Dene song. This is a beauty way song. And it means, I walk, I walk, I walk, and wherever I walk, beauty surrounds me. I will walk forever. So in a baby's life from birth in indigenous cultures, children are taught in loving ways how to live life. And there's often ceremony involved, but just in the different ways of living. You know, I'm told that in many tribes, just especially in those who use cradle boards for their infant, that when will often be they will set the cradle board facing away from the mother toward nature, so the child does not become too dependent and focused on the mother, but recognizes the world that surrounds them, the creatures, the little animals, the insects, the sun and moon, and all that surrounds him. That he will develop a relationship with them, because I think it's very important that we are part of nature. We come out of nature. We have a relationship with nature, and to honor that relationship, to get to know our relatives, all of our relatives on this Mother Earth is very important. But within a family, that child is shown great care and respect from the time of birth. And in the Dene culture, there is a ceremony. It's the first laugh ceremony. So when a baby laughs for the first time, it becomes an occasion of celebration, because it represents the time that they have really joined in the family into which they are born. And the person who made the baby laugh or was there for the first laugh, it becomes their responsibility to organize a ceremony to honor and acknowledge that first laugh. And so they organize a ceremony, maybe a feast, and when relatives or anyone can give gifts to that child. So I think that is a very beautiful thing. I think that is a very important, very common thing in indigenous cultures, to utilize ceremony and rites of passage. That baby's laugh is a very early rite of passage, because they consider that child until that time has been more in the spirit world than in this world. But at the first laugh, they are joining in and participating in the family and in the creation. But throughout a person's life, there will be ceremonies that take place. You know, when a young man, when a boy becomes a man, that's a very important rite of passage. When a girl becomes a woman, that's a very important rite of passage. As I understand it, when a boy becomes a man, there is a sweat lodge ceremony, and yucca leaves are cut, and that boy is whipped. And the reason of that being, they say, this may hurt some, but it won't be the hurt that will face you in life if you don't follow a sacred path and do your duty to your family and to your people, because it is a man's responsibility to guide his family in the spiritual ways and knowing the ways and living a good life. Another very important thing is the sand painting ceremony. And there are different ceremonies that are for different purposes, and many of them are healing. And in that ceremony, substances are gathered from nature. It's called sand painting, but it's not just sand. It might be ground turquoise that is used. There might be different kinds of clay that is used. Corn pollen is used in making these designs that represent the cosmic forces and the healing powers that can be utilized for the purpose of healing and for different ways of life. Like when a man will go to war, they might have to go to war. They might have to partake in fighting, and it is considered that when they come back, they need to be put back in balance. And so a sand painting ceremony will be done. And sometimes these ceremonies may last for days, and there are songs to be sung with them, but it is to restore balance. And there are ceremonies, and the ceremonies, of course, differ with different peoples, but I found that there are a lot of things in common in indigenous peoples around the world. Basic values are represented and expressed in the form of ceremony. One of these real basic values is respect. I have a book coming out, and I just got a email to me a book that has been written about my book, which is a teacher's guide for the lessons, the learning that can be learned in the book. And I was happy to see that there are exercises to be done with the students reading that book. And one of those is about respect. And the question is, how would you show respect to an elder? And I was really happy to see that. But just to mention a few other things that beyond ceremony, just in the ways of life, there's teaching embedded in the practices of different peoples. When I was in Colombia, visiting with the Kogi, the Teyuna people, I was gifted with what's called a mochila. A mochila is a shoulder bag, and the women sit around making these things, weaving these mochilas. They're very important in their culture. And a person will wear two mochilas, one over each shoulder, and the one on one side will represent his spiritual needs. The one on the other side will represent his physical needs. So all those things that he needs for his body and for his health will be in that bag, and then the other will be the substances and the objects and instruments needed to carry on the spiritual practice. So that is just one of many examples with different peoples. The mochila goes beyond that, in that it also represents a womb. So it is a part of a wedding ceremony. A woman, when it becomes engaged, she will make a mochila to gift to her future husband. And then they will have a ceremony which she presents that mochila to him. And it represents a womb. So she says, "What will you put in here?" And she gives it to him. So I think it's one thing we've gotten so much out of touch with in modern culture, is we've lost touch with those basic values that are so important to live a good life upon this earth, to be in balance and to express those things that are very important to our well-being. That we and from the time a child is born, that these things will be conveyed to them so that they can have a good life. So I will say that much for now. Wodo, thank you.
Moto, okay, Esty, thank you so much for sharing those beautiful examples of how we become sacred and aware of the sacredness, and it's all around us. And at this time, Patricia will share her experience of officializing a new medicine name and participating in sacred passage ceremony for becoming an elder.
Okay, hello. Thank you for having me here to share. So, it's quite an experience I had, because although I've been going through a lot of, throughout my life, vision quests, a lot of ceremonies and a lot of sweat lodges and everything, but this one in particular that I'm going to share with you is one that really was very significant, because even though I'm an elder and I've been in this planet for quite a time, this one particular ceremony that was the sacred passage that I experienced was very, very, very surprising, because I didn't expect it. And we just had finished um, an eagle dance ceremony here, which comes from the teachings of the Council of the Elders of the Twisted Hair people. And they do it here in Brazil, in my close to where I live, once a year. And I've been going there for quite a while. And when the eagle dance finished, all of a sudden, we were going. They created this passage, where there was 30 people on one side, 30 people on the other side, and it was to acknowledge me as an elder going into the 70s. Although I've been an elder for such a long time, but this was a real ceremony that I did not expect, and to give me my medicine name. So this ceremony was amazing, because after the eagle dance, 4 days of dancing, no food, no water, just dancing to the arbor, in the arbor, I went through this passage with people on one side, people on the other, and they were throwing flowers and seeds and, beautiful things. And I'm just walking slowly across that passage. And then I come to the end and I sit down in a chair. They ask me to close my eyes. I close my eyes, and someone was washing my feet, took off my shoes, was washing my feet with herbs and, you know, and I was just very quiet. And when that finished and I opened my eyes, it was a young girl whom I had met when she was a baby. So here's a young girl and here's the elder me, together. She's washing my feet. She's honoring me. And I was, oh my gosh, wow. It was so beautiful. And then the name was given, which is the medicine. I had this name for a while, but I had not, it was necessary to have a sacred passage ritual ceremony in order for me to take up the name that had been given a while ago, which is Mayela, Sun Raven Woman, and to acknowledge my that I'm an elder, because although I know I am, but when you have a ceremony in such a way, it was the first moment I really, yes, to be able to honor that, and with a young girl there right by my side, you know, the elder and the young one, it opened a doorway in my life that it's very difficult even to share, because it was acknowledging something, incorporating, integrating that I'm here, at this moment of my life for a totally new walk. And that's just started a few years ago when I had this sacred passage, this ceremony of being an elder. seen as an elder and acknowledged, and the medicinal name, which is Mayala Sunraven Woman. My normal name, I didn't say it, is Patricia Aguirre from Bolivia, but I live in Brazil. But this changed everything because I sort of like grew up all of a sudden. So that's my experience for this sacred passage and this ceremony that was so beautiful. Thank you, Gail, and all that are here listening to this experience.
Mm. Thank you, Mayela. We're happy to hear your story and grateful to you for sharing such a beautiful experience. And now we'll ask Lenny, our sun dancer, to speak on integrating rites of passage.
Well, welcome. Thank you so much for all that I've shared tonight. It's quite touching to me just to hear that, to hear all everyone's personal experiences and sharing their First Nation knowledge and ways of rites of passage. I'm going to speak a little bit about a woman's rite of passage, and I'm really the last person to do it because I'm a man, but I was asked to do a little bit and to share a little bit. But as a lodge keeper, I come across it a lot because there's just so many women here that don't understand because they've never had their rites of passage to be a woman, and they really don't even understand the gift they carry inside themselves. Traditionally, a time when a woman would have had her first moon time or menstrual period, all the women elders would have come to her and the whole tribe would have recognized, wow, what a special time this is. And they would have taken her to a quiet place, like SD was saying, to connect to nature, connect and recognize you're not separated from nature. And they would have, the woman would have taken her aside and she would have been sitting in a special place close to nature. And they would have shared with her the teachings and the life that's going through herself. And she would have been made known that it's not just a personal thing. All the sacred hoop, everything that we do in the sacred hoop is connected to all things. Like SD was talking about the laughter of a child. Well, some of the, like sun dancing, those ceremonies, they're hard. Like Patricia was saying, 4 days, no food and water with her ceremony. But the laughter gets us through. And we recognize that laughter way back, like SD was saying, at the very early stages of life, how that's such a healing part of life. And it's healing because it's part of the whole hoop. So when a woman becomes in her moon time, we recognize that, we say Grandmother Moon watches over the waters of the earth. And when a woman is going to give birth, what happens? The water breaks because water is the sacred life, and the women are the keepers of that water. So that's part of the teachings when they have their moon time that they're taught that, they are the keepers of the water. And that's when they get older and we have our water walkers like Grandmother Josephine, how she started walking and teaching other women that they hold that sacred water. It's their responsibility. I guess he was saying with the men, they're taught their responsibility. We don't teach this anymore. But when women have the moon time, that's a recognition that the water cycle within themselves, that bringing new life in. It's not just a menstrual cycle that's going to give them birth. They are holding that whole ceremony within themselves. That is a time when they are closer to the spirit side, when that part is opening up. That's a time for them to go into ceremony with themselves. And the community recognizes that. And there's your bigger picture again. the community. Can you imagine like you were in high school and all of a sudden, the girls started getting a menstrual period instead of being hauled off and go put a tap on it and go do this and oh my gosh, put her aside, lock her away. What would happen if all the girls in the classroom that also had that took her aside and said, wow, what a special time for you. Let's go out and sit in the grass out there. Let's recognize what you're going through. Let's give you time to connect to spirit, to connect to those wonderful, beautiful things. Wouldn't have high school been so different though? To recognize that in a woman? So she would have been given those teachings way back in her first cycle. She would have been honored by a community. She would have been taught, this is your responsibility to hold the water, to hold life, to bring life into existence. You are very special. You are very powerful because you hold creation within yourself. You are connected to the tides. They flow within you. The moon cycle flows within that. It's also said that a woman at a full moon can take water and coming up to the full moon, say a day or two before or during the full moon, she can bless that water. And when she blesses that water, it becomes medicine. And then that water that can then be used for healing because she holds that power. She has that creation energy inside herself, that healing power. And it's also a time of, like almost all ceremony in First Nation, it's a time when we sing. It's a time when we drum. And we have special songs for that time to call the spirits and to recognize that. But also music is a vibrational harmony. And that's why, we start our ceremonies here and our sessions with song and music and drum. Because that is a harmonic vibration that goes through all life, through all existence. And it's recognized in all ceremonies to share that. So all rites of passage will have that. Like SD was saying with the sand and the corn and the food. And at the end of every ceremony, there's always a feast. There's an honoring of the ancestors. We feed them before we feed ourselves. We go out and we put out a spirit plate. Spirit plate is simply all the food we're going to share. And we give it to the ancestors first because we're recognizing we don't walk alone here. We walk in the hoop. We walk at all times with all aspects of ourselves, whether it's emotional, intellectual, spiritual, or earthly, physical. We're all part of that vibrational energy in the hoop. And that's what we've been sharing here tonight. So when we have our rites of passage that we've forgotten, we have to remember, honor all rites of passage, honor all changes from birth right through to death, to the passing over ceremonies. And we do honor those in First Nations. Those are the teachings that we've forgotten. We may not have those teachings. We may have forgotten so many of them, especially me not being Native. These teachings are something I've had to learn. And often I've learned them by sitting out in nature and being quiet. And I recognize the truth of what is being spoken. We're connected to all those things. It's not the high of doing a ceremony and saying, wow, what a special experience. Well, that was amazing. And that's what we take away. Not that that isn't part of it. It's that connection to the hoop. That's connection to all things within the hoop. The drum, the song, the special sacredness of that moment of in your life, whether it's the birth, whether it's the coming of age as a young warrior or young woman, It's a recognition that we transition through life. It's a time we become an elder, like Patricia was sharing. Those are all special times. And the whole community, the whole tribe needs to, not needs to, does recognize that that person has a special time now. Let's honor them. Let's honor the people in our tribe. Let's honor our brothers and sisters. Let's honor our children. Let's honor our elders. Rites of passage is all about honoring and teaching, preparing for that next stage in life. And what's our death ceremonies? There are rites of passage to the next stage of our life. And we honor those as well. Thank you. Please keep on.
Thank you, Lenny. Thank you for honoring and recognizing the power of the feminine to bring life. And the new moon is this Friday. I mean, the full moon. So let's prepare our water and go about our healing ways. And this time we invite Michael to speak of the rites of passage from the natural world versus the human initiation in a social, cultural, religious, or spiritual context.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Gail. I just want to make sure you can see me okay. Great. So, as many of you know, I'm currently in production for our big event in October. So I'm traveling a lot. I'm not blessed with the opportunity of just kind of being in one place and having an optimal background or environment to necessarily do this. But in a way, as I'm doing this kind of rites of passage to help midwife this event, it's kind of always divinely synchronistic with the theme today. So I just want to thank again Grandmother Gail Thomas for helping to steward and facilitate the group, and of course our brother SD Youngwolf and Patricia in Brazil and Lenny in Canada, and the others that have taken the time to show up in the past, and for our weekly meetings and our ongoing podcast of Mending the Sacred Hoop, because even that has been a rite of passage and kind of a test of authenticity and sincerity, that we're in a sacred journey together to explore some of this subject matter and topics, and not just as a podcast to put more information out to the world. This is plenty of information, but where information transforms into wisdom and true knowledge that can help benefit people. So thank you, all of you, for what you do. And I will say very briefly, you know, the whole theme of rites of passage is again, it's such another important topic as far as mending the sacred hoop, because I know we talk a lot about things in the past like cultural appropriation, circumvention, some of what we see happening in the world. And also, I know we've been talking, and I'm looking into the future about the concepts of Watiko and some of these other things. So I do want to potentially draw on some of my notes here, because there's so much that I prepared for today. But as always, you know, I come to present, but not limited by my own perception, but listening to the wisdom of the other wisdom keepers from the council, and trying to discern what can I add that's of value, but also relevant to my personal experience and perspective. I'm not here to just read from a book or, you know, regurgitate what I've heard, but I think, as we've all talked about, is, you know, what's our personal experience? How do we embody this information that it is truly wisdom and knowledge, and not just you know, information for information's sake? So I'll mention very briefly, I am an interfaith minister, in the sense that it's not a religious thing, but I took a lot of time based on my travels in my life to many countries and many cultures, and I've always been kind of guided by the commonality and the spiritual unity that humanity shares. So in doing that, I've learned a lot about other traditions and cultures, and I have been through various initiations, ceremonies, and rites of passage. But I also want to emphasize none that I have ever tried to commodify or appropriate or market or sell. So I will say, you know, every day I see so much, and I say this without judgment. I just say this, put this in the perspective, a true, authentic, and sincere perspective, that there's a lot of lineage that's not being heard, a lot of traditional people that are not being listened to. Um, and because we're breaking this connection to our elders and to this ancient wisdom, that we can see the symptoms of how the world is right now, today, in this day and age, whether it's uh, environmentally, politically, um, spiritually, economically, whatever it is, that, you know, we're at this time, like the Hopi say, of Koyaanisqatsi, the world is out of balance. So for me, what's been important is to realize the whole importance of lineage, of the role of tradition, and finding my connection to uh, spirit, source, creator, great mystery, whatever people want to call it, many traditions, many names, but doing it in a way that nourishes me and assists me in my spiritual journey, but not, again, really important, not ever trying to, you know, commodify that or exploit this knowledge or wisdom where it becomes a product as opposed to something that is kind of a beacon that helps guide me through my experience. So I'm going to, just for a moment, I'm going to turn the camera off because I really wanted to share some notes that I was taking as I heard everybody speaking. So maybe at some point we can insert a photo. But I wanted to share that rites of passage is really a humble acknowledgement of a portal of initiation and transformation. And when we go through these things in our life, whether recognized by others, by a community, by a certain culture or tradition, that typically rites of passage are embraced with humility and are not always self-initiated. Like, oh, I did this, and now I'm an elder, and now I'm a medicine person, or, you know, these types of self um, uh, centered, kind of self-initiated proclamations of one's own rites of passage, especially when it's made as like some sort of commercial endeavor or some sort of um, you know, advertisement or proclamation of one's um, uh, kind of authority in the world. And again, if we look into traditions and we see how that works, and we look towards nature, biomimicry of how nature interacts with each other, we really see that a lot of humanity in this modern age um, doesn't get it. And I really love what Lenny also said, that rites of passage, and this is what Patricia and everyone really spoke to, it's really part of an individual process, but it's also about, it connects us more to community. It doesn't elevate us above anyone else or community. It's like taking our place within that sacred hoop, within this lineage of knowledge and wisdom. So speaking very briefly from my own personal experience, I wanted to mention some of the rites of passage that um, I've experienced and used in my life, but again, I've never really tried to commodify. So I was fortunate enough to spend many years, um, actually about 8 years, in Flagstaff, Arizona, very connected with the Dene and Hopi people. And one of the things, by working with the people there, I learned about some of the traditions of birthing ceremonies, and also naming ceremonies, and also what we call the umbilical ceremony. So I thought it was a beautiful way that in a lot of the colonial mindset, um, or many other traditions with the suppression of the feminine and feminine wisdom, and the patriarchy and Western medicine and all these other more contemporary influences, that we've lost something that's really valuable to the human condition. So, there is a birthing ceremony. I won't get way into it. It's not like you just go to the hospital, you birth the baby, and you don't see the baby for a day and it gets slapped and the umbilical's cut. In many traditions, they have different ways of doing that. When we birthed our child, several things happened. We didn't cut the umbilical cord. We actually waited several days for it to fall off naturally, because we are very much practitioners of nature's intelligence, and nature knows what it's doing. And again, with so much technology these days, and now with AI and all this stuff, everybody thinks machines are more intelligent, but really the most intelligent, knowledgeable machine organism in the whole universe is really the pinnacle of how we have evolved as human beings. And I say that in a way not superior to, animals, but part of a greater ecosystem. But again, that we have a lot of this natural intelligence. So we did umbilical ceremony where we didn't cut the umbilical. We also kept our two daughters out of direct sunlight for 7 days. And then on the seventh morning, we brought them out and we did a naming ceremony. So, we waited because we wanted to get a sense of the spirit or the medicine or energy of the child before we just give it a random name, like, okay, this baby's going to be Bob, this baby's going to be Sue. And I'm not saying that as a criticism. I'm just saying, for me, it just seemed like a very much more knowledgeable way, connecting with these traditions, to do something that would have positive influence in my life, my children's life, and they would also get the benefit of this traditional wisdom. So again, we birthed them at home with a midwife. We birthed them in water. We didn't cut the umbilical. They stayed out of the sun for 7 days, and we did their naming ceremonies. And actually, I will say, at the naming ceremonies, some pretty miraculous things happened with nature, thunder, with animals and hummingbirds. That was kind of something I think a lot of people missed, of them being brought into the world, not just kind of born into a hospital and you cut the cord and you slap the baby and whatever, because a lot of people do have trauma around that. So the last few I want to mention, I was raised, not a religious family, but I was raised in a religious, pseudo-religious community of Catholicism. And of course, in our tradition at that time, even though I've gotten more in touch with other parts of my ancestral roots, we have this thing of baptism, which again, many traditions and cultures use water in very specific way as rites of passage. And as Lenny was saying, there's also, in many traditions, when a woman reaches the time of her womanhood and being able to childbear, there's other different types of things like moon lodges and other things that happen to acknowledge that time of a person's life of maturing to becoming a woman in childbirth. I will say I lived with Rolling Thunder for a year and a half in Nevada, and strangely enough, I was asked to help kind of steward and help serve the women that were in the Moon Lodge. And I have to say, it's a powerful time for women to be creative and to be with themselves, not to have to work and run around, but to really drop into that natural cycle. And I think, again, in my humble opinion, looking at the world, that's why there's so much imbalance of the feminine, because we're not always honoring the feminine, the women, and the moon time, and doing it in a way where they can focus on that time of cleansing and helping to renew and strengthen the community. And then there's the last couple. One is, of course, many traditions, the idea of marriage. But there's other things like the near-death experience can happen. When I was younger, I had a near-death experience by being hit by a car. So, that was definitely some sort of rite of passage. But again, it's nothing I talk about or I promote or I try to market. It's just something that happened on a very personal level. And then, of course, there's many traditions that have, death and dying ceremonies when someone is passing from the physical world in preparation. And I've seen many different traditions around that. I happen to live in Crestone, Colorado, where we still do outdoor cremation ceremonies when someone passes, which is very much tied into many indigenous cultures. It's not like you have to buy a coffin, you have to buy a place in the summer, you have to spend $50,000 as part of, the death and dying process, but they do it in a way that's very organic of sending your body back to the elements and to that and to connect with nature and in which it came. But the last thing I wanted to say is really the importance of lineage. And I think, even right now, I see so many people in many traditions, it was sacred to get a tattoo. That was another symbol of a rites of passage. And I will say now, and again, not as a judgment, but as a simple observation, now I see, children and adolescents and people just everywhere kind of appropriating some of this ancient tradition of tattoos as a rite of passage. And I see people covered from head to toe. So again, it's not for me to judge, but I have to think about like something that was part of a sacred tradition has kind of been appropriated and now it's kind of become something around like vanity and fashion and what's cool. So I could go way off into that. I won't, because I want to keep what I have to share in a very limited time. But I just think there's a lot of appropriating things that have been part of sacred and traditions and just now being kind of exploited and used in a very superficial way. And I don't want to invalidate anyone's experience, but I just want to say that um, it's disturbing, especially when people have no sense of their own ancestry, their own lineage, their own cultural connection, their own uh, tribe or ancestral affiliation, and they're not connecting with that rich body of wisdom that all cultures had, whether you're from Africa or India or the Mediterranean, you're South American, you're indigenous here from Turtle Island. We all have a rich culture. So even though there's good medicine that we can experience from other traditions, like we don't have to change who we are. And that's the biggest thing I want to kind of just speak about is about um, you know, uh, how people are appropriating these things. And, I meet so many 20-year-old elders and medicine people now, and I have to just kind of scratch my head because, um, I think on the surface, it kind of, you know, it might look okay, but when you really ask someone, who's your teacher? Where did you get your knowledge? What's your lineage? How was this wisdom imparted on you? It's kind of it becomes like a shallow well of like, oh, well, I went here and I did this and now I'm an elder. So that's all I wanted to say. So I think with, rites of passage, the idea of respect, of tradition, of traditional wisdom, of lineage, knowing ourself, connecting with our ancestral identity and walking in humility and whatever rites of passage we go through, like you don't have to advertise it and sell it and turn it into a commodity. So again, thank you for this time as part of this wisdom council. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael, for wrapping us up in such a good way and for bringing us together and supporting us in many good ways. And I'm happy to announce at this time that we have an answer to our question in this endeavor of how can we help mend the sacred hoop. It really came to our awareness that we can offer something that's very challenging, and we're going to begin workshops on recognizing and dealing with the dark energies and entities that we are confronted with continuously. We look at the Dene teaching that says humans are not capable of taking life, either their own or that of another living being, unless they are possessed by a disembodied spirit. And we look at all the war and the violence in the world today, and we want to do something to help. So, towards the end of October, we're going to offer workshops on dealing with the dark energies in our world today. So, we're excited about that. We're looking forward to that, and we'll talk more about it in our next session, which will be our final session of this series on Mending the Sacred Hoop. We will tell you also our personal gifts that we were surprised to come into during the process of this diligent work that we've undertaken. And we're very happy to celebrate in a good way as well. So we'll bring some of our favorite food to, I guess, show you. Can't share it on Zoom or YouTube, but we can show you how we celebrate in our next session on Mending the Sacred Hoop, and we hope to see you there. So much love and gratitude to all of us together in community, and the beauty of that we can share in this opportunity. Thank you all for joining us. Doga Ani, until again in our seventh session, and much gratitude to Pamela for making all of this work and helping us share in these ways. So you're all invited to join us in the next session, in the seventh session and celebration. And we might take a few questions in that session as well. If you have questions, or you're welcome to put them in the comments on the YouTube videos. But we hope to see you again. Wado. Grateful to all of you.
Thank you. Until again.
Thank you deeply here from this end of the world. I'm in the southern part. Love you all. Thank you.
We're allowing. Thank you.